The Lilies of the Field by William E. Barrett. Chapter 3. The morning was still, with no movement in the wide and lonely land. Homer Smith rose early. He dressed in a pair of army slacks, a button-down gray shirt, a blue necktie, a gray jacket. A man had to look sharp on Sunday, if no other time. He wandered around aimlessly, missing the sense of life, movement, and activity that he associated with this strange place in which he found himself. As time passed, with no bell sounding, it became apparent that there would be no breakfast. He remembered vaguely from the army that Catholics, or some Catholics, did not have breakfast before Mass. His own hunger was the captive of Catholic custom, and he was uncomfortable. He removed his bed from the station wagon, providing space if not comfort for his passengers. At 8:30, they emerged. Mother Maria Martha and her 4 nuns wore long black robes with white starched bibs and white bands across their foreheads under black hoods. They looked now like his idea of nuns, but he was astonished at them. "You girls sure look nice," he said. Whether they understood his English or not, they recognized the compliment by its tone. They looked pleased. Mother Maria Martha wasted no time on looking pleased. She sized up the station wagon, ordered the nuns into the back, and elected to ride with the driver. There were no seats in the back, so the passengers sat on the floor. There was something pleasant and companionable about that, and Homer had an impulse to sing as he drove out onto the road. He didn't sing. The stiff, no-nonsense woman beside him wouldn't put in with singing. He was certain of that. Piedras was a shabby little town, and the church was a flat-roofed structure of adobe. Homer let his passengers out and stood beside the station wagon, ignoring the hard stare of old Mother. This close was as close as he intended to go to a Catholic Mass. He waited until the nuns entered the church, then crossed the street. There were signs in Spanish all over the windows of a small cafe, and he did not have to understand Spanish to recognize a place that sold beer and miscellaneous food. He wasn't certain that it would be open, but it was. A thin man with sad brown eyes rose from a stool and moved behind the counter. "I want a man's breakfast," Homer said. "Ham and eggs, lots of ham, and pancakes, and anything else you got, and coffee. I want lots of coffee, and I start with it." "See, I can do it." "You are the man who does the work for those nuns?" "They do a lot of work themselves." "See, this I know. It is a great folly. They cannot make the living in this country. It is not possible." A steaming cup of coffee appeared on the counter in front of Homer, and he inhaled the fragrance of it. The sad man had a grill behind the counter, and he broke eggs onto it. Ham sizzled, and Homer's nostrils twitched. He hadn't ever thought about nuns making a living. New thoughts interested him. "They are Germans. They speak good Spanish, but nobody listens. There's no reason for it." The little man talked on. He knew all about the nuns, or claimed that he did. They were from the wrong Germany, the one that is communist, and they escaped, which was a great embarrassment to their order. But yes, there was some politics about it which no one could understand. "It is the church politics and politics of Europe, and who can understand the politics even when it is of his own country?" The nuns could not stay in Germany, and the order owned this land. It came to them in the will of Gus Ritter. Did the customer know Gus Ritter? Everybody in this place knew him. Todo el mundo. He was a hard, mean man who worked his family night and day to make money for him. His son and his son's wife burned to death in the house next to him. A lamp of kerosene caused it. He was too mean, Gus Ritter, to have electricity, although poor people in this country had it. After his son burned up, he did not live long. He left his land to this order of nuns because his sister in Germany belonged to it. For a long time, the land was idle. Gus Ritter made good money from it growing the potato. These nuns came and they had nothing. They knew nothing except to teach. There was no school and they did not know the English. How could they teach? They sold some land to buy tools and furniture and lumber. For what purpose? What could they do? Would the customer have some more of the eggs? The customer wasn't interested in eggs, but he would have more ham. Homer Smith was enjoying this experience. He was catching up on his victuals after 2 lean days. The steady flow of talk from behind the counter fascinated him. He had always had a weakness for good talkers. He liked the cadences which Spanish brought to English, and the occasional Spanish words or phrases, meaning nothing, delighted him because they so obviously belonged to what the man was trying to say. "The Mass is finished," the man said. There were a few people coming out of the church across the street. Homer rose and stretched. It had been a noble breakfast. As he was paying for it, he thought about those hungry nuns. He hesitated. Working only occasionally and traveling much, he had learned thrift. He shrugged and purchased 5 slices of ham, which he carried to the car in a paper sack. The main body of worshippers moved slowly out of the church. Spanish, all of them. Poor people. Homer towered above them as he stood beside his station wagon, and he was aware of his physical superiority, as he was aware of the curious glances that he attracted. Nobody spoke to him. The nuns did not come out until after everyone else had gone. The priest came with them, a short, thin man in a brown robe with a white cord around his waist. Mother Maria Martha was talking to him in Spanish. Her Spanish did not have a lot of German in it like her English did. She introduced Homer to the priest, and he did not understand what she said about him, but he caught his own name. She called him Senor Schmidt. Senor means Mr. in Spanish. He knew that. She never called him Mr. in English. The priest was Father Gomez. These Catholics were a comical people. They called themselves father and mother when they weren't and when they didn't aim to be. The priest shook hands with him. He was a quiet man, half sad like all the Spanish, with a low voice. He wouldn't be likely to get a call from a Baptist church. He wasn't an exhorting type. He said something nice about Homer being good to the nuns. "Mother Superior tells me that you are going to build her a chapel," he said. "That is just an idea she's got in her head. One man can't do that." Homer felt embarrassed when he read disappointment in the priest's eyes. He had no reason to feel embarrassed, but he did. He spoke hurriedly to cover what he felt. "I've been studying your church. Never saw one like it before, not close up. It is not impressive, but I would like to show it to you." The priest brightened. He led Homer to the wall of the church and showed him where the outside coating of adobe had cracked. There were adobe bricks underneath. "They are simple bricks," he said. "They are made out of adobe clay and little straw, sometimes the manure of the horse, then dried in the sun." The door was of rough board. Homer hesitated when the priest opened it. He had never been inside a Catholic church. There were vague memories in his mind about tales he had heard of weird Catholic spells and of idol worship. He was curious about the construction of the building, so he followed the priest in. There was an altar, and there were rows of rough benches, strange-looking images that wore clothes, murals of biblical scenes painted on the walls. The walls were whitewashed adobe concealing the brickwork. There was a poverty about it that attracted Homer Smith. He understood poverty. The priest was telling him that he had 3 other churches like this one in which he said Mass on Sundays, that his home parish was in the larger town of North Fork. Homer nodded. This was a busy man, a circuit-riding preacher. He respected him. "I'm glad I saw your church," he said. "It is a poor church, but God comes down to it." The The priest's eyes were intent upon Homer's face. Mother Superior says that she prayed for someone to help her and that you came. What do you think about that? Homer laughed. He did not mean to laugh, but this was a disturbing subject. I think that she figures that she owns me. She figures that the Lord gave me to her as a present because she did all that praying. Not that, the priest said. I am certain not that. But she has a need and she trusted in prayer. It is not a fault in her if she believes that God sent you. He didn't send a black Baptist to a Catholic nun. He didn't do anything like that. It would be odd, wouldn't it? I don't see much sense in what she's doing. She does what she must at the present. These nuns have to live. She wants a place here, ultimately for poor boys from the city, Spanish-speaking boys who get into trouble. No one is interested in them. They could work and learn and be happier in the country than in the city. No one will believe that until she proves it. She knows what she wants to do, and she is strong of will. Yes, Homer said, I know that. She's a strong-minded woman. But God didn't give me to her, and she doesn't own me. She's got to get that out of her head. He was thoughtful driving home, and he declined the breakfast invitation, abrupt in his presentation of the paper sack to Mother Maria Martha. Just a little ham, he said. Maybe you girls might like it. He gave her no opportunity to say thanks or not to say thanks. He turned away hurriedly and climbed into the station wagon. He drove to a parking place close to the excavation and changed into his working clothes. He had an innate respect for the Sabbath and a disinclination to profane it with servile work. But the army had relaxed the rigid rules of his boyhood. In the army, a job that had to be done on Sunday was done on Sunday. It was like the ass or the ox falling into a pit and having to be hauled out. The nuns, however, seemed to be abiding by the old rules, so he restrained his urge to plunge in and finish the clearing of the excavation. He walked around the excavation and measured it again. He returned to the station wagon and obtained a small pad from his locker. He covered the pad with figures. He had worked for many people, and he had done many things. He had varied skills. Always he had worked with someone telling him what to do. Nobody in all his life before this had told him to build a church. Nobody had ever said to him, "Here's the ground, and here I want a church, and it is your job to build it." It was like a call. It elevated him. He was all alone, one man, with a hole in the ground and a church to be built, and no one to tell him how. He took his black pipe from his locker and packed it. He smoked cigarettes during the week, but on Sunday he smoked a pipe. It was his father's habit. His father could not afford to smoke tobacco 7 days a week, so he settled for Sunday. Homer had been smoking a black pipe like his father's on Sunday ever since his father died. In his mind it was sort of a memorial, and he drew satisfaction from it. He sat on a small pile of partly consumed lumber that he had stacked a few yards away from the foundation. He puffed on his pipe, and there was a sheen over his eyes. He was seeing something before him that wasn't there, and the world around him did not exist. He was unaware of Mother Maria Martha until she spread the wide skirts of her black robe and sat beside him on the lumber. It was the most companionable thing that she had ever done. "Schmidt," she said, "we can do it?" It wasn't a statement, it was a question. That, too, was unusual, but Homer's mind was away out where the unusual is usual and nothing ordinary matters. "It would take a powerful lot of work," he said, "and a lot of those 'dobe bricks." "How much?" "About the work? I don't know. Nearly 4,000 bricks." They sat silent, contemplating the foundation where once a house had stood and where a man and a woman had burned to death. Mother Maria Martha rose. Tomorrow, we go to North Fork, she said. Homer didn't answer. North Fork was the big town of this section. He hadn't seen it yet. If she wanted to go, he'd take her. She wouldn't do anything about the gasoline. Gasoline was like the lilies of the field to her. Somehow it would be provided. The noon heat pressed down, and he moved into the shade of the station wagon. The land was big, and there was loneliness all around him. He thought about going back to Piedras and listening to the Spanish man at the eating table, but that was too much trouble. The day without work or travel seemed as big and as empty as the country. He took his guitar out of the station wagon. He traveled with everything that he liked in that old vehicle because it was his home while he rambled. He had bought the guitar in a pawn shop in Tacoma, a better instrument than the one he had owned back in South Carolina. He tuned it and played softly, feeling his way into a mood. In a little while he was singing, keeping his voice down, not putting out anything, singing to his own soul. He sang Wade in the Water and Deep River, Blind Barnabas, and Old Time Religion. He let his voice swell out a little on Shenandoah because suddenly the mood was right and the song was saying what he felt inside of him. Mother Maria Martha returned then, and he felt her presence without seeing her. His mood was stronger than her presence, and his voice made its last crossing of the wide Missouri before he looked up. The old face with its deeply graven wrinkles was forbidding, but the small eyes seemed less hard than usual. "Schmidt," she said. "Come, bring der music." He rose reluctantly to follow her. He had been doing all right alone. His resentment melted when he saw the 4 nuns waiting expectantly in the dining room. The table had been pushed back and his chair was placed so that he would face them. They were women without music in a great, flat, lonely place that was intolerable without it. He looked at them and his heart lifted. These were people who needed something that he had to give. He started softly, offering religion to religious people. Swing low, sweet chariot, and did my Lord deliver Daniel. He warmed to them then and worked to lift them, swinging into Ezekiel saw the wheel and dry bones. Their feet moved and their eyes were alive. Old Mother, sitting stiffly, didn't seem to mind, so he did Waterboy and John Henry. He had no particular awareness of his voice except as an instrument like his guitar. It was deep, a bass baritone, and he could do with a song whatever he felt like doing at the moment, but he did not try to make his voice obey any rules. When he finished John Henry, Mother Maria Martha clapped her hands. It wasn't applause. It was the end of his solo. "We sing," she said. He nodded, accepting the role of a accompanist. "Give me the key," he said, "and let us hear how it goes." The old nun nodded to Sister Albertine, who had a moment of shyness. She wet her lips, and her thin fingers tightened, making fists out of her hands. Her large blue eyes met Homer's, and she leaned forward. She sang, and her voice was true, a sweet voice, not strong but perfectly pitched. A man could follow it. Homer watched her and listened to her tuning the guitar. What she was doing was chant, a simple thing. He drew deep organ sounds from the guitar, and it was right. Everything was right. The voice, the music, the accompaniment. Sister Albertine felt him with her, and she signaled to the others. They came in, and they knew what they were doing. None of the voices were as good as Sister Albertine, but this chant did not call for good voices. Sister Gertrude's voice was harsh. Sister Agnes and Elizabeth sounded like just anybody out of a Baptist choir, and the old mother's voice was cracked. But together they made a strange, solemn sense. This was Latin. It was Homer's first experience with sung Latin, and he approved the sound of it. It belonged to this music. As they changed from one hymn to another, Sister Albertine led him into the sense of the new chant, and the others joined in as he picked it up. Loneliness had long since dropped away from him, and he felt exultation. He wanted to mingle his voice with these others, but the words eluded him so long as he regarded them as words. When he thought of them merely as sounds, they made a pattern in his mind. He signaled to Sister Albertine for a repeat at one point, and when he heard the sounds a second time, they clung to his mind. The voices of the nuns came in again, and his voice joined them. Ave Maris Stella, Dei Mater Alma, atque semper Virgo, Felix Caeli Porta. It was that easy. They stopped when Mother Maria Martha clapped her hands. It was supper time, but Homer paid no attention to his food. He ate it, but it made no impression on him. When he walked to the station wagon, he was empty of thought, but filled with throbbing sound, a happy feeling of reverence. He stood for a long time, looking at the shadowed shape of the excavation.